opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. I am Trevor Sikkema. With me is Connor Rogers on another positional ranking Thursday episode of the show. We did edge rushers last week, and we figured, hey, let's stay along the defensive line. Let's just round out the defensive line. Let's talk about our favorite interior defensive lineman for the 2022 NFL Draft. Connor, how are we feeling on this final show that you and I are doing this week?
Pretty good, man. I mean, this is time to get through some of the big nasty boys on the inside of the defensive line. And, you know, an interesting group. I think we've had some late risers thanks to the Senior Bowl with this group. We've had a couple guys that played in some big-time college football games this year that nobody will be surprised to hear from. But definitely one of the ones, Trevor, that you got to comb through very deeply to find the starting caliber players, the guys that can go in the top 60 to 75 of this draft. Not our strongest interior defensive line year,
right,
but still very noteworthy because at the end of the day, teams always need to improve their interior.
And that's why we're doing these, right? It's not just to say, hey, let's highlight this prospect group.
Yeah.
These guys are going to be all top 5, top 10 prospects or whatever. We're highlighting all these groups, not just to tell you like who we like, but also, is this a strength? Is this a weakness, if you will, of the class? Are you going to have to really pick one of these guys high if you want to help your interior out? Or is it a super deep position group that you can wait on a little bit? That's what we're doing here. That's what we're trying to do on these rankings. And so if you've listened to these shows before, you know how the format goes. Connor and I are going to go 5 through 1, give you our top 5s for this position. And then at the end of the show, we'll get some shout outs to some guys who just missed the list, maybe some mid-round gems or just guys that we really want to give some love to in this class. So let's start it off. Let's go with number 5, Connor. I'll put you on the clock right away. We'll get right to it. Who is your number 5 interior defensive lineman in the 2022 NFL draft class?
If you asked me this a month ago, he would not make the cut, but because of the Senior Bowl, which I don't usually do that. I don't usually do like, oh, great Senior Bowl, like you're in, but it was that good where I'm questioning some things about his time at the college level. Number 5 for me is Perrian Winfrey from Oklahoma. And let's get the bad out of the way first, right? Just to set the table. I did not think his film from especially last year, especially against the run, was very good at all, to be completely honest with you. I think there's times where there is a lack of discipline, a lack of play strength, a lot of things going on here. I think there's some juice as a pass rusher on the interior. I think the way that he can get off the ball and use his hands at times and beat interior pass protectors can be impressive. But he went down to the Senior Bowl and was somehow unblockable. And it makes you wonder, was there, meat on the bone that he saw there that unlocked something different?
Right.
Was he misused at Oklahoma? Was he unhappy at Oklahoma? Is he just getting better over time? There's a lot to unpack with Perrian Winfrey. So I will put this disclaimer that number 5 and the top 4 are very far apart in my eyes. This is a number 5 that I am... he snuck on here. I think this isn't the deepest group. I think he absolutely kicked ass at the Senior Bowl. He can get on the field as a rookie on third down passing situations, and you just say, go. We need you to go. Go beat the guy in front of you. Don't think about anything. Don't think about two-gapping. Don't contain. Shoot and go. If that's what you are asking of him, and you're getting that on round 3 or 4, I'm okay with that for Perrian Winfrey at 5. 5 for you. Did Winfrey make the cut, or is he on the outside looking in?
No, Winfrey did not make the cut for me. He's one of those on the outside looking in guys. And so, I would have given him a shout out kind of at the end of the show, but since you brought him up here at 5, I guess I'll just give my thoughts there. 6'3", about 300 pounds, right at 300 pounds, interior defensive lineman from Oklahoma. Was a 4-star defensive tackle, was the number 1 JUCO rated recruit in the 2020 transfer portal, chose Oklahoma over the likes of Alabama, LSU, Texas. So he had a lot of suitors coming from JUCO. And when he got on the field, I mean, you understood what this guy's entire calling card was, and it was pass rushing. It was one gapping. It was penetrating. That's what his strength is. And, he did have a really great Senior Bowl, but a lot of what we saw at the Senior Bowl is almost along those same lines as we talk about when the combine rolls around, where it's like, hey, don't count wins twice, right? Like if you know a guy is fast on film, don't watch him run fast at the combine and be like, wow, I've got to put him up in the rankings because you already knew that. You already saw he was fast. Don't count the wins twice. That was kind of Perrian Winfrey's story with the Senior Bowl. And I don't want to take anything away from him. It was awesome to watch him put on a show, but where did he win at the Senior Bowl, Connor? One-on-ones and one gap penetrating. Like that's what he is all about. He is really quick, moving laterally for a big guy. He understands, man, when he can club rip you and when he can put that arm underneath an offensive tackle and really hook you, this dude turns. He turns quick. He turns on a dime for a 300-pounder. I'll tell you that for sure. But you get him up against certain guards, certain centers, and when he is one gap and attacking really half of their body, right? When he gets to really almost get you into a turnstile and get that arm underneath you, man, he can really turn the corner. I think there's a lot of really nice things that you like to see from a pass rush profile. Dude can't hold up against double teams. I mean, strength is not his profile.
No.
Rundowns worry me. I don't think you can put this guy on the field on early downs in the NFL.
No
even
way.
From what we saw at the Senior Bowl and how juiced up he was. You know, you talked about, hey, what in the world happened at the Senior Bowl? I'll tell you what happened. He was working with the Jets defensive line coach, and that guy was screaming. He was screaming in his ear, and Perrian Winfrey was jacked, man. He got up for it. He matched the energy of the defensive line coach, and honestly, I genuinely feel that was a big catalyst for what allowed him to have such a good week. So he does not make my top 5, and a big reason why is because he is so limited right now to me. Where you basically can only put him on the field in pass rush situations, and if you don't have him on the field at all times, can you have faith that you're just going to say, hey, you're only going to play a handful of snaps and I'm going to get the best out of you for those handful of snaps? There's no guarantee in that either. So it's kind of tough for him. I think that he's got to get stronger, man. It only gets tougher in the NFL. I mean, shoot, he was losing against double teams in the Big 12, and all respect to the Big 12. I mean, like, it's a spread you out, speed, tempo kind of a conference. So, I mean, if you put Perrian Winfrey in the SEC, man, he gets blown off the ball 3-4 yards sometimes. Like, I'm worried about him from a strength profile standpoint. I love what he does as a one-gapping interior penetrator. He knows where the money is made. It's with pass rushing, and he has that ability. But I agree with you. That's something that really kept him off the list for me. Number 5 for me, and I'm not super jazzed about my number 5 either. It's DeMarvin Leal, the interior defensive lineman, but really just overall defensive lineman for Texas A&M. This is a former 5-star recruit, former number 16 overall recruit in the country when he committed to Texas A&M. 6'4", 290 pounds. So he's on the lighter side. And I think when you look at the positives for DeMarvin Leal, a lot of people will point to his versatility, to his burst, how he's able to get in the backfield very quickly, how very similarly to Perrian Winfrey, he can be a one-gap penetrator, kind of an interior defensive lineman, and he can really make a name for himself doing that. And I will preface it by saying this. For an interior defensive lineman, DeMarvin Leal is very athletic. Like, he clearly pops out in what he is able to do for an interior defensive lineman. The problem is, this is kind of the same problem that Perrian Winfrey had. I don't think he can hold up. I don't know what you do with a guy who's 290 pounds, because to me, that's way too much of a tweener player. Like, you're too light to play 3-tech and anything lower in technique. Like, you can't play a shaded 2, you can't play a 1, you can't play a nose. You just don't have enough sand in the pants. You don't have enough weight there. And then, am I going to put you out at the edge? Am I going to have you play a 5-tech? Because I can't have you play anything that's really like a speed rusher, anything in like a wide 9 alignment, anything that's a far out edge rusher, because 290 is too high. Like, you're not going to beat anybody out on the outside shoulder. It's just not going to happen. So then basically the only home I have for you at that weight for DeMarvin Leal is a true 5-tech 4-3 defensive end. And I don't know if he's athletic or twitched up enough to really succeed just like as an end, because you've got other guys who are weighing like 260, 265, 255 even, who are bringing more to the edge rush profile. So I don't know. We're starting off this interior defensive line group mentioning guys who are number 5 and kind of talking about the things that we don't like about them. But guys, like I said at the top of the podcast, is kind of what we're doing here. We're highlighting players and we're highlighting position groups, and we're telling you what the strength and weaknesses and how deep they are. And unfortunately, we had DeMarvin Leal, a lot of people did, as like a top 20, top 15. Yeah. Sometimes I even saw him in the top 10 of those way too early mock drafts. And I just don't see it anymore, man. I just don't think he's a first round player. I don't really know what you do with him. And, to throw a player comp out there for you, it's a little bit different because this guy was a little bit lighter. But Solomon Thomas, man, he gives me a lot of Solomon Thomas vibes. Yep. I think that Solomon Thomas was one of those players who I certainly fell for coming out of Stanford, where I went, holy cow, this guy can fire up the field. And, he weighs similarly to what Aaron Donald did. And he's just got so much great ability. And he's so good as a pass rusher. He's so fast on that interior. Guards and centers are just not ready for it. And man, it just don't turn out like that. Aaron Donald's an alien. Aaron Donald's rare. He's so fast and he's so strong that he actually makes it work. But when you get these guys who are a lot lighter, they're often homeless, if you will. We talk about interior defensive linemen having a lot of versatility and versatility being a good thing, but there's a difference between being versatile and not having a home base. You still have to have a home base as a 3 tech, as a 5 tech, as a nose, as something that you can always lean back on while you hone versatility skills at other techniques along the defensive line. I don't know where DeMarvin Leal's home base is because I just don't know what it's going to be in the NFL. So I feel like I'm being harsh on a player that was a very highly rated recruit, very athletic dude for his size, but man, I think he's too much of a tweener for me. It's going to be tough for him to succeed right away in the NFL.
It is. He didn't make my top 5. I'll clarify that. He would have been in the just missed category. So I had Winfrey at 5. He was just missed for you. You had Leal at 5. He was a just missed. One of the just missed for me. And I think that is part of it. You wonder, can he be a 4-3 defensive end in an attacking scheme? Well, sure, but are you willing to deal with his shortcomings against the run? Are you sticking, a belief that you think those will improve? I don't know. I'm just not there. I just think and once again, this comes down to maybe I went into the season with too high of expectations, mocking him in the top 20 to 25 picks, and the play was not there. And if you guys are listening and really want to get a feel for some of the things we're illuminating, with Leal, I would start with the Alabama game and yes, it's Alabama, but guess what? That's what the NFL is like. The NFL is Alabama.
Right.
So, all right. So moving on to number 4, and this is somebody, like I said, the tier is going to pick up now and get much different. I was joking or kind of being serious with Trevor off air before we recorded the show. This might be the guy I'm willing to put my name on the most confidently, or at least understand of what he is, and it's Travis Jones.
And he's
from
4?
UConn.
He's 4 for you?
And he's 4 for me, which
in
I'm
this class? In this economy?
I know. It's shameful. It's shameful. He's 4. He could have easily, honestly, been 1 or 2. That's how much I like him. So we'll go with 4 here for Travis Jones. I like to say a true nose tackle, shade nose, but he could play 3 tech. He could do a lot of different things for you between that range. He has such a thick, powerful lower half that he does not get moved. And that's what stands out on the All-22. When you see him, you're like, oh, he's not going anywhere. He is literally a boulder on the turf that nobody can move. And he can take on double teams. He can win one-on-one pass rush opportunities. He is very, very good at stacking and shedding blocks against the run and blowing up the backfield. And when he went down to Mobile, because guys like that kind of get their reputation because of their size and their build and what they highlighted on tape as, run stuffers, and don't get me wrong, he absolutely is. I thought he kind of went into the pass rush drills as a heavyweight boxer, just throwing these haymaker clubs around. It was just like, whoa, like easy there. So I love him. I really love him. I think if I was a team on day 2 and I said my run defense sucked, I hate my interior, we need to be better, and we need to be better now, I would feel really good about taking Travis Jones as early as the 2nd round. So he comes in at 4 for me. I think some of the guys ahead of him are ahead of him because of some maybe pass rush ceiling, but big fan of Travis Jones.
Well, I'll get to my thoughts on Travis Jones, but I'll get to those in a little bit. So I won't unload the clip on what I think about Travis Jones, because we'll talk about him in a few minutes on my rankings. I have him a little bit higher. Number 4 for me, another kind of tweener player, but one that I have a little bit more faith in, and that's Houston's Logan Hall. Logan Hall measured in at 6'6", 270 pounds, and some people have him listed as an edge. Some people have him listed as an interior defensive lineman. I think he's closer to like that 4-3 defensive end or 3-4 defensive end or 4-3 interior player than I would say that he is like this true edge guy. But you certainly see why you would maybe want to have him as an edge because of his length. He's got a great frame and he uses it very, very well. I think he's got I was super impressed with seeing him in Mobile, not even during the drills, but literally just physically, looking at him standing next to some of these other interior defensive linemen and edge rushers, man, he's built really well. I mean, he carries a lot of weight in his lower half. He's got a lot of strength to him because of that. He's got the long arm moves. He can, especially when he's going up against guards and centers and things like that, man, when he is able to get out of his stance and really explode out of his stance, he can extend those arms. And there are not many interior offensive linemen in the NFL who are going to be able to counter a really successful long arm from Logan Hall. And so I think that he understands leverage really well. He covers those gaps. I think he can hold up against double teams. If he's going to play on the interior a little bit more, I think you're going to put a little bit even more weight on him. You're going to get him probably into like the 280s. And so that's going to come with more strength, more anchor ability, while still giving you some decent one gapping, penetrating there. So there's a little bit of a projection because his size and weight and where exactly you play him is kind of why he's a little bit lower for me. But I'm intrigued and I have more faith in where I'm going to play him and and how he's going to succeed in the NFL than I do like a DeMarvin Leal or some of these other guys who might be a little bit more versatile. So that's why I have Logan Hall at number 4, the Houston, I'll say defensive tackle, because I think he's going to be more of an interior guy, but it does depend what team he goes to. If he goes to more of a 3-down lineman, 3-4 heavy scheme, I could certainly see him being listed as a defensive end. So it all kind of depends there, but those are the roles where I see him playing, and I've got him number 4 here on this list.
Yeah, I like Logan Hall a lot, so much that he was number 3 for me, and I just think
you love a good transition. You really do.
You love to see it. His pass rushing tools are real, and that is going to translate. The fact that he is, he's obviously got really good length. I do think that weight can fluctuate because he carries it well. It kind of reminds me of the career path that Sheldon Richardson has had to go through, where he was drafted by the Jets and they were congested on the D-line, so they kicked him around. He played 3-tech, 5-tech. He played out on the edge. And then he's obviously played for Seattle, Minnesota, and Cleveland since, and then back to Minnesota. And he's had a lot of success everywhere he's gone, but he's really bounced around as a defensive end and a defensive tackle and a true 5-tech, 3-tech. And I think Hall will experience the same thing. And the calling card for both of those guys is that they just know how to get after the quarterback, and they could still be run responsible is what I like to call it. They're not selling out in the same way that I think Leal and Winfrey do at times. So Hall is an instinctive enough player against the run. I think he's got excellent pass rush traits. We've seen it for 2 years now. He's amassed almost 50 total pressures over the last 2 seasons, and that was under 500 pass rush opportunities. So for the interior kind of guy, he is converting at a good rate. Trevor nailed it. When you just get a look at him and the build he has and the athleticism that he has, there's a lot to like with Logan Hall. So I think it's got to be the right team, and only the right team will draft him because he is a very specific kind of player. But if you need somebody, like when the Ravens took Justin Matabuke a couple of years ago, it's like, okay, we need a guy that can play on the interior and shoot gaps, fire off the ball, and win as a pass rusher, and there's going to be unique situations to utilize him. I think Logan Hall will be perfect for that.
Yeah, and he's the lack of full-on flexibility you would expect from a player who is 6'6", 270 pounds, right? I'm not really knocking him in that way. I don't really see that as a negative. I just see it as a reality for him. And that's ultimately why I feel like I would rather take a chance on throwing some extra weight on him, getting him a little bit stronger and allowing him to play inside rather than being on an edge. I'd rather him play a little heavier than a little lighter, because I'm not sure that flexibility gets any better if you have him at a lower weight. And instead, I think you could have a real good chance at a mismatch kind of a player along the interior defensive line, like I was saying, from basically anywhere from a 4-eye technique, which is right in the inside shoulder of the offensive tackle, anywhere from that in, where you're talking 3-techs over the outside shoulder of a guard, or 2 eyes, the same thing. You get a little bit closer in there, 1-0s, all that. He presents a lot of great matchups with length if you throw a little bit more strength on him. So I think that those are all the reasons why I've gotten him on this list. And then I'll just round it out because you had Travis Jones at number 4. It was a good flip-flop there. I've got Travis Jones at number 3. I'm not gonna lie to you, man. I almost had him at number 2. I really did, because
it's tough.
He's that good. He is just, exactly what you're gonna get. And I I ultimately had to say to myself, just because I'm so sure of what I'm getting in Travis Jones does not mean he's 100% better than the guy that I have at number 2, which we'll get into in a few minutes. But, Travis Jones from UConn came to the Senior Bowl, really put on a show, 6'4", 300 pounds. He is a monster. He put it on full display in Mobile. He was able to show a lot of really great success in pass rush reps, albeit, it was bull rush stuff. It was strength stuff, but that's going to be his entire game. What you really love to draft Travis Jones for is those early downs, first down, second down, setting the tone, holding the point of attack. You watch that Clemson game, man. I loved watching that Clemson game because he was taking on double teams. He was splitting double teams. And, I thought that he did a really good job of knowing exactly what his job as an interior defensive lineman was on certain plays. When he could definitely tell that it was a run that was pulling a certain direction and he was going up against a double team, he'd have no problem dipping the shoulder, putting the hand right in between the two guys, splitting them, going right between them, telling the running back, hey, you better bounce it outside or I'm going to bring you to the ground. And then there were other times where, they would clearly go up against more of a duo or inside kind of a run where his job was simply to eat the double team. It's not to get in between. Ground. It's not to get in between these two guys. It's not to, because that's something you do see with interior defensive linemen who make a lot of their money off of, say, pass rushing, is sometimes they will say, okay, the best thing I can do on this play is, even though it's a run play, get by my offensive tackle, the guy who's blocking me, get into the backfield and force the running back to go one way or another. Sometimes that works, but if you're not super consistent with it, say if you're not basically Aaron Donald, that might not always be the best way to defend the run. Sometimes it really is just biting the bullet, if you will, knowing that the duo block is coming right to you, standing your ground, putting one arm into the chest of each of those guys and holding your ground and anchoring down and letting one of your linebackers stay free and tackle the guy 1 or 2 yards after the line of scrimmage. And I think that you saw him understand that and execute that very, very well. He gives you such a great peace of mind, I will say, yes, as a run defender. And then he gives you a little bit of an extra pass rush profile to him. So number 3 on my interior defensive line group, but man, I really liked him. This, I think, is probably an early second round pick unless somebody needs an interior guy enough in the first round and maybe wants to take a chance on him. I don't think it's far fetched, but I would tell you that Travis Jones probably going to be one of those premier preferred players at the beginning of day 2.
I think so too. I think just he's passed every test thrown at him. I think a lot of people go, UConn, like whatever. I mean, UConn somehow produces NFL talent, and Travis Jones is every bit of NFL talent in that regard, in a class where, because he's so responsible right away, it's going to make him so much more valuable to NFL teams in a draft where there's not a lot of players like Travis Jones in this class.
No.
Like we just spent all of that time talking about Leal and Winfrey. All of their problems are Travis Jones' strengths, even for Logan Hall, who I think is very good against the run. But Logan Hall is 260 pounds, okay? Travis Jones is probably going to play at 330. He's an absolute bus.
Yeah.
Like an absolute bus, a slab of concrete to move. So, all right. Now we get into the top 2. For me, they play for the same team. And nobody's going to be surprised by that. If you were awake on any Saturday of the college football season, you could not miss these 2 humans. Number 2 for me is Devontae Wyatt. And I will say that you could almost flip a coin between number 2 and number 1. And obviously number 1, I already gave it away with teammates. I think it's Jordan Davis. So number 2 with Devontae Wyatt, he was just tremendous for Georgia this year. He has pass rush juice. He's active against the run. I think the one thing that separated him for so long that maybe didn't excite him as much on broadcast compared to Jordan Davis is because he looks small next to Jordan Davis. Yeah, right. He's still 6'3" and over 300 pounds.
Right.
But Jordan Davis is just the size of 2 big humans. So nobody cared about Devontae Wyatt. But you should care about Devontae Wyatt. He was awesome this year, man. He was, like I said, a very productive pass rusher. He was a house against the run. He passed every test down in Mobile, but that didn't matter for him in my eyes because what he did in the SEC was enough. So in a defensive tackle class that, kind of leaves you wanting more, Devontae Wyatt's one of the rare ones that if he goes in the top 40, I'm like, I get it. He's warranted that. He has upside starter potential. The tape, there's 4 years of tape for him doing that. This was by far his best year. So Devontae Wyatt comes in at number 2 for me. I think he's a better pass rusher than Jordan Davis, but he doesn't have the size and the strength against the run. That's the difference.
Yeah, I like Devontae Wyatt a lot. In fact, I like Devontae Wyatt enough for him to be my DT1 in this class. And so we're flip-flopping here with the 2 Georgia guys. Devontae Wyatt, I think he got dealt a bad hand. Well, I guess, that's not fair because he benefited off of it. Essentially, what I'm trying to say is he was on an interior defensive line with him, Jordan Davis, and Jalen Carter. And Jordan Davis is obviously the size of a small townhouse. And so he was going to obviously get all of the attention, literally in a lot of different ways than DeMarvin Leal was going to get. But then he also had to go up against Jalen Carter. And Connor, you know how the draft world works. When there is a sophomore who is not quite draft eligible, who is doing great things.
Everyone drools.
Oh, we all go, what about we have this when this guy comes out?
If he was in this class.
And granted, if Jalen Carter was in this class, I'm pretty sure that he would be DT1. So this was well warranted. The hype for him was well warranted. But all that to say, Devontae Wyatt did not get the eyeballs that he deserved. And he went down to Mobile at the Senior Bowl. And you know what? He absolutely whooped up on folks. We talked about how Jermaine Johnson didn't even need a 3rd day of practice. Look, man, neither did Devontae Wyatt. He didn't. He dominated for 2 straight days. He went up against all types of interior offensive linemen. And he was cooking them. You mentioned how stout he is against the run. That's just what Georgia does. That's how they breed their defensive linemen down there. That is just in their blood. But he is also a fantastic pass rusher. I really do think that this guy gives you a lot of plus size wherever you're going to play him, from a 3-tech, 2-eye. You're going to throw him at nose at some points.
Whatever you need.
He can give you a little bit of quickness going up against centers when he's heads up, or whether he's up against the shoulder of them. And he understands that he's got the quickness to get in cross guys' faces. One gap in different situations. He's got some good moves. He's got a swim move to him. He knows how to push pull. He can hit the club rip. Like he does it all, man. And I think Devontae Wyatt is, you mentioned it. I've got Jordan Davis at number 2, and we'll get to Jordan Davis and we'll talk about him in a second. But it is the pass rush ability that Devontae Wyatt brings that I don't think many others, if any, interior defensive linemen in this class do. And if they do bring a similar pass rush profile, they're doing it at either 15, 20, 25 pounds lighter than Devontae Wyatt is. I think that he is the man. I think he is my top defensive lineman, defensive tackle, I'll say, in this class.
He was just more creative than Jordan Davis. That's what it comes down to as a pass rusher. So, there's just so much to like about Wyatt. I think he has maybe the most complete game of any defensive tackle in this class. I obviously can also make that argument for Travis Jones.
I was going to say, it just depends. I mean, like, if you're talking about Travis's game, that's pretty damn complete. But I agree with you. It's very overall well-rounded when you look at Devontae Wyatt.
All right, so let's get into the mountain that rides. That's Jordan Davis. I mean, good God, the man is just, he's such a conflicting player, because when he's on the field, he is so impactful in terms of you can't run at him. He's going to open up so many opportunities for his teammates like Wyatt. And the thing is, I think there is a snap limit with him that is not going away. I don't think when you're just that large, you're not going to be this guy that just lives on the field for majority of the game. I do think that there is obviously a lack of creativity as a pass rusher. At his size, he's probably been gifted his whole life to be like, yeah, I'm bigger and stronger than you, so I'm going to run right through you every time, and I totally understand that.
Hasn't failed him yet.
I was going to say, wish it could be us, Trevor. So I just think when it comes down to it, Jordan Davis is going to be on an NFL field. He is still going to be bigger and stronger than almost most guys in front of him. He is going to be an early down player that opens up opportunities for teammates. I think his successes and impact will not be measured correctly in a box score, but on actually winning football games and getting your defense off the field, he is going to have such a significant impact on early downs that consistently puts the opposition in bad spots on 3rd and longs. It's a long game with Jordan Davis that I'm playing here. I will say, not my kind of player I draft in the top 20. After all of that praise, I think there are people. I'm always perplexed when I'll do a mock draft and someone's like, Jordan Davis ain't making it to 23, and I'm just like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? And then I'll see one that has him in the top 10. I think the way the league has gone, you don't see that kind of player drafted that early anymore.
Right.
But man, like I've said to you before, you put him on the Bucks at the end of the first round next to Vita Vea, and the impact is unbelievable.
Yeah, so I love that pairing. I mean, it's absolutely hilarious to think about Vita Vea sitting next to Jordan Davis. I would sign off as a
meme aficionado.
Yes, that would be absolutely fantastic. So my comp for Jordan Davis is the Mountain from Game of Thrones, and that's probably the best comp that I could possibly come up with, just because it's just towering, imposing, everything is when you look at Jordan Davis, the strengths in a scouting profile for a guy who is 6'6", 370 pounds are obvious. He's a monster against the run. You can't move him in the middle. Double teams barely work against him. If you single block him, he's just going to straight stack. He's just going to straight stack you, and he's going to peek. He's going to see where the running back's going. He's going to throw you off, and he's going to make the tackle. So that's not an option. He is one of those players, and we kind of hear this all the time. And the thing that I think is the biggest, what word am I going for here? If you really want to draft Jordan Davis high, what you want to emphasize is that he can help you change the math, if you will. And I've heard a lot of people a lot smarter than me talk about this, and I've tried to learn what this is all about. I know the guys in the Too High podcast, Deontay and Seth, talk about this all the time. And it's those players that are so uniquely gifted at what they do that it allows you to steal a gap, if you will. Sometimes you could do that with alignment. We've seen, the tight front be able to do that. We've seen different defensive coordinators try to get creative with where they align guys to almost kind of steal a gap, if you will. And I'm talking about kind of like gaps in the run game, which is kind of where everything starts in football. When you have Jordan Davis, you basically command that two people have to block him, because if two people don't block him, you don't have a prayer of staying in front of him. Now, there are things that you can scheme to run around or put a speed element to avoid going straight up and head up against a player that is that big. For example, I think that if we were doing a mock draft in October, November, I would have had Jordan Davis as a top 12 pick. I would have told you, God, don't make many of them like this dude. He's unbelievable. He's going to be fantastic. Just draft him, figure it out later. And then the college football playoff kind of came around, and we saw teams really expose Georgia, specifically Alabama, with tempo and not allowing Georgia to substitute and get Jordan Davis off the field. So all of a sudden we're a handful of plays into the drive, and Jordan Davis is absolutely gassed. He can't even do what you have him on the field to do. He's gassed against run support, not just pass rushing. So that is an issue for him. And I'll say this. People are going to compare it to Vita Vea and where he should go in the draft. Vita Vea goes just outside the top 10, but I think Vita Vea was different. Vita Vea brought more of an athletic, twitchy profile to him. He was 6'4", 347 pounds. Jordan Davis is 6'6", about 365. Vita spent most of his first 2 years with Tampa Bay simply getting his weight under control and reshaping his body. And I think that that's going to be a decent amount of what Jordan Davis does, especially if you draft him high, because if you don't improve his body shape and his conditioning, then it is going to be a problem for you. And if that's going to be a problem for you, then he's not worth a top 20 pick.
No.
So if he gets picked really high, I'm going to tell fans of that team right now, you're going to have to live with the frustrations, because the first 2 years is just, they're basically going to say your entire job is to get in shape, eat really well, reshape the body, and get your conditioning going. Because year 3, year 4, you're coming out like a monster. And I think that's kind of what the path is for Jordan Davis. He is very uniquely gifted in his size and his strength, and he will be an asset in the NFL no matter what. But the difference between what makes him a first-round pick, a high draft pick, and a day 2 pick depends on your expectation and how you're going to treat him, and knowing that it's going to be a little bit of a retooling, and how conditioning is going to be such an emphasis to getting a lot out of him. So those are my thoughts on Jordan Davis.
I think it was perfect. I think it's a matter of you always need a plan. You should never draft a guy without a plan. But for somebody like Jordan Davis, it's even a more particular plan, right? And I think, you go back to that weight and conditioning. You look at rare guys in the NFL size-wise, right? And there's always the question of, you're enamored with the size and how much that can change the on-the-field results, but you're also cautious of the size, because can that prohibit them from being on the field at times. And the most recent example I think of, and I know I'm biased here, is Mekhi Becton with the Jets, though. I mean, his rookie year, he was on the field a decent amount, and he was awesome. And I know he got hurt his second year, but weight has been a legitimate issue in, the rehab process, obviously, and the ability to just consistently stay on the field for long stretches of time. So it's a gift and a curse at the end of the day. Of course.
Yes, it is.
And Jordan Davis is going to go through the same questions, fair or not, and that's what's going to dictate him as a top 20 pick or a top 40 pick. And you can ask 50 draft analysts or 50 scouts or the 100 total, and I think you would get a dead split of different answers.
So who's some guys that might have just missed the top 5? I guess I'll recap it right now. My top 5, I had DeMarvin Leal from Texas A&M. I had Logan Hall from Houston, Travis Jones from UConn, Jordan Davis from Georgia was my number 2, and then Devontae Wyatt from Georgia was my number 1. Connor, you had Perrian Winfrey from Oklahoma at number 5, Travis Jones at 4, Logan Hall at 3, Devontae Wyatt at 2, and then Jordan Davis at number 1. Who's somebody who kind of just maybe missed the list, or somebody that you just want to show some extra love to here at the end of the pod?
Yeah, so earlier I said Leal just missed as well. He didn't make my top 5. Another guy that didn't make my top 5, and I would feel better about floor-wise than Winfrey, but not ceiling-wise, would be Phidarian Mathis from Alabama.
Glad you're bringing him up.
Yeah, I think Mathis has had a quietly really nice year plus here that it's almost like he plays for Alabama, so it went unnoticed at times because they have so much talent on that defense. Mathis does a lot of the little things right. You can see a nice variety of moves, very, very good. Like you said earlier, I forget who you were talking about, but the same thing with the rip and the club. He knows how to win on the inside and get himself into space and make plays in the backfield. And Phidarian Mathis, to me, is just a rock-solid prospect that, will probably be a third-round pick and will end up playing 60% of the snaps for somebody for a good stretch of time and being a nice starter that holds his own against the run, is starting to show some pass rush juice. So at the end of the day, he was the one that I was most conflicted on leaving out of that number 5 spot because I do like what he brings to the table as a player. Nothing overwhelmingly impressive, but just a lot of little things the right way where he could be an average starter.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you brought him up because you are right. He is so rock solid. And, right before we were doing this podcast, I was preparing for it and everything. I was like, you know what? I'm going to get on here and I'm going to have DeMarvin Leal at 5 and I'm going to have Logan Hall at 4. And I'm going to talk about what scares me about him as prospects. And then we're going to get to the end and I'm just going to talk about how much I like Phidarian Mathis and just how steady he is and how much I like his game. And I was like, I should put Phidarian at number 5.
I feel the same way now.
I didn't do it because you were right. Those guys have higher ceilings than Phidarian Mathis. And I do think that matters. But when you're talking about a mid-round player, I don't know where Phidarian's going to end up going, but you're just getting a really nice backup rotational defensive tackle in there. I look at, and I know this team really, really well, so I use their examples a lot. But for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Raheem Nunez-Roches is a dude who just comes in when Vita Vea and Dominican Sue need a break, either of them. Him and Will Golson are those two dudes that come into the interior. But Raheem Nunez-Roches, he's just good. He's just a good rotational
and no
guy.
One cares.
And he never gets any hype, but he plays the 0, he plays the 1, he can play 3 tech. He's just a really solid backup defensive lineman. And I think that's exactly what Phidarian Mathis can be in the NFL for a long, long time. Maybe he'll be even more than that, but I know the floor is really high for Mathis. And so I'm glad that you gave him a shout out.
Yeah, I think Mathis would be the number 1 guy you got to go to. And then one sleeper here, it's hard to call anybody that plays in the SEC a sleeper, but I think that when you're looking for bodies on early downs, Neil Farrell Jr. from LSU is somebody to me that can come in and hold up against the run. He's a massive human, 6'4", probably going to play around 330. And I think the run tape is rock solid where, especially, you turn on the game against Alabama, you turn on the game against Florida, he does a lot of good things against the run. He's a true interior player at that size. So he's someone that might even go on day 3 of the draft, and his role is very defined as an early down player. But in a draft that, once again, there's not a lot of rock-solid run defenders. I think Neil Farrell Jr. is that guy outside the top 50 that I go, okay, I like him, and I feel good about the role that he brings. Who is that guy for you that you don't really see as a top 50 pick, but you're like, I know he could do this for me from day one.
Yeah, it's an interesting prospect, and I'm picking Zion Hill, the interior defensive lineman from Louisiana, and I watched a little bit of him because he had a pretty dang good PFF grade when I was looking at things in the middle and the end of the season. He's a former 2-star recruit. I thought he was really nice as an interior penetrator. He knows his bread is buttered with pass rush, and I think he's got great get off. I think he's got a really nice burst interior player. Now, the reason why, he's 6'1", 290 pounds, so he's not going to be a big time starter for you. But man, when I looked at this list and I saw these tweener kind of players for whatever reason that we were going to mention in the top 5, around the top 5, I was like, look, you know what? If you're considering these guys as high draft picks, then you might be able to pick a Zion Hill later in the draft and get that kind of potential that you want to take a swing on, at least that archetype of player, maybe not to that level as those other guys. But I don't know, man. I watched his tape and I was like, you know what? This guy knows exactly what he is. He's a speed rusher. He's a 1-gap penetrator, but I'm not going to have to pick him with a top 50 pick, a top 75 pick, something like that. I can wait on him and I can let him kind of develop, maybe be a situational player for me. He doesn't bring enough strength profile to be in there on early downs and consistently right now, but he's a mid to late round draft guy, probably more likely a late round draft guy that you maybe take a chance on, help you on special teams, be a practice squad guy, see what we can get out of him, because getting pass rush reps, good pass rush reps out of interior defensive linemen, I think you're always gonna go after that stuff. So Zion Hill from Louisiana is the kind of late round guy that I wanted to give a shout out to.
All right, that wraps up the early defensive line preview, the pre-NFL Combine defensive line preview. Obviously, a lot of different flavors in this group. I think it is clearly lacking, like when you look at the seasons that we've had in the past, right? Like you talk about Derrick Brown. Like everybody knew Derrick Brown was going to be like a really early pick, an impactful kind of player. I don't think it obviously doesn't have that guy, but I think it made this group that much more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we know that regardless if the class is super deep or super shallow, teams are going to want to add along the interior defensive line. That's just how it is. Teams are building through the trenches every single year, and it'll be interesting to see who goes where and how high they go. So even though you and I clearly don't think this is one of the stronger positions in the 2022 NFL draft, we know that teams are going to be looking for these guys, and it's just going to be a lot of fun, I guess, to see how they evaluate them, where these guys end up going. But we're going to find out a lot more about that next week, because we got the Combine next week, baby. It's the start of Combine week next week. Connor, I cannot wait, man. We did not get to do a podcast in person for the Senior Bowl because of weather and travel plans and all that. We got to get one. We got to get one for the Combine.
Yeah, we will. We will get one that will be everyone's Monday show. So that'll be pretty much lining up with post-Combine with the way things are scheduled this year. So we will get to do a show in person. We are going to have a lot coming out of the Combine. If we get to see all the people that we think we're going to get to see, not talking about on TV, talking about what goes on behind the scenes.
Yes.
Post-Combine is going to lead to a lot of fun stuff. So you'll want to stick with us through that for sure.
Ooh, very excited. Combine week is one of my favorite weeks of the entire football calendar. We're going to bring you all of the updated rankings. We're going to talk about who's playing well, who's talking well, some great quotes from head coaches, GMs, and of course, all the rumors and what we are hearing from behind the scenes with a little bit of liquid courage, if you will. The beers, the mixed drinks, they always help trying to figure out information. So we promise not to have too much fun for you guys, but certainly enough fun to where we're going to be able to bring you a lot of really great information. We'll see you guys then. Thanks for tuning in to the NFL Stock Exchange.